Picture this, it's 1942. The world is at war, the news is grim, and grocery store shelves are unpredictable at best. Sugar, meat, butter, coffee, all rationed. You don't just run to the store for a missing ingredient. Instead, you make do with what you have. But here's the fascinating part. People didn't just survive, they ate surprisingly well. I've always been struck by the ingenuity of those home cooks. They didn't have luxury ingredients, yet they turned scraps and rations into hearty, filling meals. And today, with supply chains still vulnerable and food prices climbing, those same recipes can serve us just as well. They're simple, affordable, and designed to keep you going through lean times. So let's take a journey back in time. We'll visit 8 recipes from World War II that can still keep you full and nourished in any modern-day crisis. These aren't just relics from the past, they're survival tools, lessons in resilience, and, dare I say, a bit of culinary magic born from necessity. Named after Lord Woolton, Britain's wartime Minister of Food, Woolton pie became a staple in homes across the UK. It was a vegetable pie, pure and simple. Diced carrots, potatoes, turnips and onions, stewed in a bit of stock and thickened with oats or flour, then topped with a crust made from wholemeal flour and whatever fat you could spare. No meat, no fancy seasoning. Yet it was comforting, warm and filling, exactly what you needed after a cold day and a long queue for rations. I've made it myself with a modern twist, adding seasonal herbs from the garden and swapping the plain crust for a mashed potato topping when flour is scarce. It's a recipe that proves vegetables, when handled well, can be the heart of a truly satisfying meal. Meat was precious, so cooks learned to create dishes that felt meaty without actually containing much, if any, meat. Mock goose was one of the cleverest examples. Instead of goose, you'd layer potatoes with breadcrumbs, sage, and a small amount of drippings or fat for flavour. Baked until golden, it had the rich, savoury aroma of a roast dinner, even if no bird had been anywhere near it. It's a perfect example of using herbs and cooking techniques to satisfy the senses, not just the stomach. For anyone preparing for lean times, mock goose teaches us that texture, aroma and colour can be just as important as the main ingredient. Wheat flour was rationed, but potatoes were relatively abundant. Wartime cooks discovered that boiled mashed potatoes could be blended into bread dough to make loaves lighter and stretch flour further. The result was moist, slightly sweet bread that stayed fresh longer than standard loaves. It's still a fantastic recipe today, especially if you grow your own potatoes or, have access to cheap seasonal ones. Potato bread really makes the most of what you have and requires no fancy equipment, just a bowl, an oven, and, well, a little patience. Sugar was one of the first items to be rationed, and fruit preserves quickly became a bit of a luxury. Carrot marmalade was a clever substitute, using the natural sweetness of carrots combined with just a small amount of citrus peel to create a jam-like spread. The texture was bright, the colour cheerful, and it could be eaten on bread, stirred into porridge, or even used to sweeten baked goods. It's a reminder that when sugar is scarce, you can still enjoy a taste of sweetness by leaning on naturally sweet produce. This soup was a close cousin to Woolton pie, but simpler and more adaptable. Whatever vegetables you had, cabbage, leeks, carrots, parsnips, went into the pot. Rolled oats were often added to thicken the broth and boost nutrition. This wasn't a delicate, dainty soup. It was hearty steaming and designed to fill you up for hours. For modern crisis cooking, it's the perfect clean out the fridge or use the garden harvest recipe. You can make a large pot, store it and reheat it for days, just as families did during wartime to save fuel. When butter was scarce, cooks made mock cream from margarine, sugar or syrup and a little milk. Whipped together, it could be spread on bread or used in cakes. It wasn't quite butter, but it gave the mouthfeel and richness people missed. Today, it's a fascinating lesson in food psychology. In a crisis, a little indulgence can go a long way for morale, and mock cream was exactly that. A way to make tea time feel special when the pantry was bare. Nothing was thrown away during the Second World War, especially not the fat from roasting meat. That fat, called dripping, was spread on bread with a sprinkle of salt or even sugar. It sounds a bit odd to modern ears, but it was calorie-rich, flavourful, and, well, free if you were already cooking meat. In survival situations, dripping sandwiches teach us that the byproducts we often discard can be valuable sources of energy and nutrition. Fat, especially animal fat, was treasured as much as protein in those days. Oats were cheap, filling, and didn't require much rationed wheat to cook with. Savoury oatmeal dishes, like oats cooked with onions, stock and herbs, became common. Shaped into patties and fried, they could be served with gravy as a meat alternative. It's a recipe that still works brilliantly for anyone needing to make a satisfying meal out of pantry basics. Oats are shelf-stable, inexpensive and incredibly versatile, making them a true crisis staple. What stands out about these WWII recipes isn't just their frugality, it's their adaptability. Each one is built on principles that work in any crisis. Use what's available, waste nothing and rely on flavour and texture to create satisfaction. They remind us that simple ingredients, handled with care, can sustain us physically and emotionally when times are hard. When I first tried cooking these dishes, I expected them to be bland or dull. But I quickly discovered they were more than just make-do meals. They were practical, nourishing, and in many cases delicious in their own right. And you know, there's something profoundly grounding about cooking the same recipes that sustained people through one of the most difficult chapters in modern history. If you want to incorporate this knowledge into your own life, start with 1 or 2 recipes. Try potato bread when flour is scarce. Make Woolton pie from your next vegetable harvest. Keep a jar of carrot marmalade for when you're low on sugar. These dishes aren't just for history buffs, they're for anyone who wants to be more resilient in uncertain times. The beauty of this kind of cooking is that it doesn't depend on a fully stocked supermarket. It depends on creativity, resourcefulness, and an understanding that food is more than calories. It's comfort, tradition, and connection to those who came before us. Food is a thread that ties generations together. When you cook a loaf of potato bread or a pot of Woolton soup, you're not just making dinner. You're keeping alive the lessons of people who endured and overcame incredible hardship. And if they could make it work with what little they had, so can we. If you enjoyed this journey into the kitchens of the past, subscribe to In the Beginning and share this with a friend or family member who loves history or cooking. Let's keep these recipes alive so the next time shelves run bare we'll have more than enough, not just to survive but to thrive.